I don't know why that light's coming in like that. Turn this off. And it's too dark. Alright, well, anyway. What we have here is a JVC R-K200 stereo receiver. I bought this back in the day. It's like the first stereo I ever bought. You know, it wasn't vintage. Bought new in the 80s. I didn't know anything about vintage stuff back then. Even if I did know about vintage stuff, I don't know how you'd go about getting it without the internet. I mean, I guess you could buy off of classifieds, but I mean, unless you knew somebody who had something who you could inherit that from, or was really checked out on this gear, I mean, you wouldn't even know where to go buy this stuff. Nowadays, vintage stuff like this Scott, you can just get on eBay. Anyway, I dug this down, got it out of the closet, said I'm going to listen to this thing. I opened it up. It's got a pretty good power transformer in here. It uses some kind of a, I think it's on an SK4171, some kind of a stereo power amplifier chip with a big massive heat sink on it. I mean, I like seeing the real power supply, you know, the full wave power supply with the transformer and the big caps. So this is, and I don't know if they do that anymore. I don't know how amps work, modern stuff. The only thing that was wrong with it was, I shouldn't probably be playing that music. I hope it doesn't get me a copyright strike. Anyway, maybe I was talking too much for it to pick it up. Anyway, the only thing that was wrong with it was these switches were a little bit dirty. These were speaker switches. It would kind of go in and out. You know, you'd touch them and you'd lose a speaker. So what I did was I just sprayed a little bit of my standard cleaning stuff. I was able to get back in there. I took the metal cover off. I was able to get in there and squirt a little bit of spritz in there, and that took care of that problem completely. You know, it sounds good. I got hooked up to the Wharfdales. I was trying to do sound comparison tests between the two by using headphones. I thought I could maybe determine a little. I mean, clearly, the first problem is trying to get the equalizer set up to kind of mimic what I'm doing down here. Honestly, I couldn't hardly tell the difference between the two once I got them pretty much set up. I think I might like the Scott sound a little bit better. I mean, I'm no audiophile. I'm certainly not going to use all those silly terms I always hear about brightness and all this kind of nonsense, but it sounded, I think, a little bit better. But the only way to know for sure would be I'd have to get like maybe a switch where I could just toggle between the speakers. I even thought about hooking up one speaker to one channel, the other speaker to the Scott, and just kind of comparing the two, you know, with the balances turned one way to the other so I don't hurt the amplifiers anyway with no load on them. But I don't know if I bother with that or not. I think it's a crying shame though, because you know this gear, like I said, it sounds perfectly fine. It's from the 80s, it works well, and you know, I think I paid like $250 for it new back in the day. I could $85, I guess. And this stuff is just relegated to just pure junk. I mean, you see these things on eBay and they're lucky to give them away. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe it's not. Maybe it doesn't have the snob appeal it needs to have. But like I said, honestly, it sounds fine. And heck, you could probably get one for next to nothing. Of course, you could probably get vintage stuff for next to nothing if you get solid state vintage stuff, you know, with the analog tuning like the Scott. But I mean, it works well. The only thing I thought was kind of odd about it was at first I thought the AM wasn't working. Then I realized that you have to have an antenna lead, a wire hooked up to the AM for it to work. I popped open. Sure enough, there's no ferrite rod loop style antenna in there at all. So again, I don't really understand the technology used. It's a little bit later than my time. But you've got to have some kind of antenna lead for it to work. And I presume the longer, almost old school, like, you know, the longer the lead, the better reception, and no lead, no reception. Anyway, like I said, I think it's a shame that these kind of things end up getting junked, thrown away, recycled, whatever. I don't know what happens to them, but it sounds good and works perfect for something that's 30 years old. Like I said, I don't understand the waste and the consumerism, why stuff like this just gets tossed and replaced with new. I really can't imagine it sounding that much better buying new stuff over this old stuff. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. I do know the one thing that was the major difference was the speakers. Again, I'm using the Workdales. I had some cheap speakers I bought with it back in the day when I didn't know any better. I just bought some crappy junk Kenwood speakers. I don't know what they were. And I had them hooked up, and they sounded terrible compared to the Workdales. I mean, they just vibrated and sounded awful. I mean, if you kept the volume real low, it was tolerable. But anything beyond just very low levels, the speakers sound like just bad. They're in a junkyard. I mean, they might as well have been white van speakers for all I know. But they were Kenwood, and I bought them with the unit. But I guess name brands don't mean anything in the 80s. They were junk. So I do think you need to invest in some decent speakers. And I like the vintage speakers because they require less power for the amount of output versus I presume modern speakers. I mean, I hear people running hundreds of watts in the speaker. I can't even understand how that can possibly be. I mean, this thing is supposedly 40 watts per channel. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what the thing says on the specifications. There's no way I'm cranking this thing up beyond, the number 2 on the volume setting. So, I mean, that's at 1, and that's fairly loud. Much longer than that, it starts hurting your ears. So I don't know why anybody would want more. Anyway, just a little rant about the 80's tech that I think is perfectly good and seems to work really well, and yet is consigned to the junk bin. I wish people would be as more conserving with their electronics instead of filling landfills with this kind of stuff, just keeping it and using it, and I don't know, maybe making it repairable so that when it does go bad it can be fixed. I guess I just don't like waste. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.